is truly it is truly our honor and our privilege to welcome you this evening to our Shabbos HaGadol Drasha, a pre-Shabbos HaGadol Drasha with Rav Yonah Reis. We have had this opportunity for many years to do so. We thank this year also the sponsors this evening, Shabbos HaGadol Drasha, Kate's family, Levin Oram, and also the Yahav family, Dr. Yigal, Dana Yahav, for making this also an opportunity to support the shul. And I would remind people that if they're interested in sponsoring either a week of learning or specific shiurim, it would be very helpful at this time. We are just a week away from Pesach. It's just around the corner, and this will be a very, very unique Pesach for all of us. And the reason that we are concerned about this Pesach being forced to stay at home is also a reason that we can all take advantage of this Pesach and really focus on the basics. Be able to focus on the opportunities to learn the Seder together with whoever is with us, to fulfill the Seder in its core principle of question and answer. And the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha was always something that was used to prepare people for the night, for the holiday of Pesach, and therefore it is truly an important function. The function being that it is an opportunity for all of us to learn more and to learn together, and especially this year, where the way we are together is virtually. It is my great privilege to be able to spend almost every Shabbos until the last few with Rabbi Reis at my side on the Bima. It is an honor for our community to have Rabbi Reis with us as our Av Bezdin of the CRC, and especially at this time, with all of the challenges that we face, to have Rabbi Reis available to answer some of the most complex and difficult shilos that we ever imagined, we never would have imagined, would come to the fore. Rabbi Reis is a leader in the halachic community, a leader in the Orthodox community, and a leader in the general Jewish community because of his knowledge, his expertise, his warmth, and his ability to understand and to explain some of the most difficult concepts, which is precisely what the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha is all about. And so without any further ado, it is indeed my pleasure to welcome Harav Hagon Rav Yonah Reis to deliver the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Matenki, for that very warm and beautiful introduction. As Rabbi Matenki mentioned, it really is under very unusual circumstances that we are joining together this year for the pre-Shabbos HaGadol Drasha. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity for us to feel this sense of achdus even while we are in our separate locations, and to feel that sense of togetherness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has provided to us through all of these technological advances. And I also want to thank the sponsors, the Kates and the Yahav families. And I want to also dedicate as well the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha for in the Suchus of Refuah Shlema for all of those individuals who are unfortunately suffering with the coronavirus, that they should all have Refuah Shlema B'mheira B'sok Shar Cholei Yisrael and B'sok Shar Cholei Olam. So I wanted to speak tonight about why it is divine to recline. And I'll explain exactly why I think this is an appropriate topic for our times and for our situation as well. We have the 4 questions that are part of the Manishtana that the children ask of their father, and the child says, Manishtana halayla zem mikol halaylos. Why is this night different from all of the other nights? Other nights we eat chametz and matzah. This night only matzah. Other nights we eat other vegetables. Tonight only maror. Other nights we don't dip at all. This night we dip twice. And the last question is: other nights we eat ben yoshvin or ben mesubin, whether we're sitting or whether we're reclining. Halayla hazeh kulanu mesubin. This evening, Leil Pesach, the night of the Seder, everybody reclines. There's some sort of a mitzvah that people are supposed to recline. This is a time of relaxation, a time of serenity, a time of protection, Leil Shimurim, Hu La Hashem. And this is what reclining is all about, like the Rambam writes, Kederech Shehamalachim, HaGadolim, Ochlin, the way in which the kings and all of the aristocrats, the people who are on the highest strata of society, the way that they're able to relax and recline when they eat with a sense of royalty. But this year, I think that the emphasis is not so much on the last two words of Kulanu Misubin, but on the first two words, Halayla Hazeh. Right now, it seems like it's night, it's darkness. Quite frankly, it's terrifying. And yet, at the same time, despite the fact that it's Halayla Hazeh, nonetheless, Kulanu Misubin. We're going forward with our Pesach Seders, and we still are going to perform the mitzvah, Yetz Hashem, of Haseba, of reclining, even in these difficult circumstances. It's still Leil Shimurim. It's still a time to relax, to recline, to rejoice. How and why? This is what I want to talk about during the remainder of this year's Shabbos HaGadol Drasha. The mechanics of reclining are relatively straightforward. You look in Rabbi Shimon Eider's book on the laws of Pesach, based on the Mishnah Berurah, based on the Gemara in Pesachim, Daf Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. The way that one reclines is that you sit on a couch or a bed or a chair. Nowadays, it's generally a nice, comfortable chair. You lean to your left. You have a pillow or a cushion on the side, and the head is supposed to recline and lean against that pillow or that cushion. Rav Soloveitchik used to point out that reclining requires an object. You can't just lean on your left side and leave your head hanging in the air. It has to lean on an actual object. That's the mechanics in terms of how one performs this notion of a haseba, of a leaning. But what type of a mitzvah is it? Is the leaning a mitzvah in its own right? Or is the leaning a subset of, or a component of the mitzvah of eating matzah and drinking the daled kostos, the 4 cups of wine? These are the parts of the Seder where it's brought down specifically in the Gemara, in the Shulchan Aruch, where one really is obligated, required to recline. Do we say that it's simply a component of the proper fulfillment of these mitzvahs? If you didn't recline, then you didn't perform the mitzvah properly, or you didn't satisfy your obligation, and therefore you have to perform the mitzvah again? Or do we say, no, even if you didn't recline, you still performed the mitzvah? It's just that reclining is a separate standalone mitzvah, and the time to fulfill the separate standalone mitzvah of reclining is primarily during the time that you eat the matzah and the time in which you drink the daled kosos, the 4 cups of wine. So really, it turns out that this is a machlokes, and it really depends on how you read and how you understand the Gemara. The Rosh understands that in the event that somebody didn't eat their matzah while reclining, they didn't fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah, and they have to eat the matzah again. Similarly, if you drank the 4 cups of wine, we'll see that the Gemara has a sapek, it has a doubt, an uncertainty regarding whether the mitzvah of reclining is really during the first 2 cups of the 4 cups, or whether it's the last 2 cups of the 4 cups. And the Gemara comes to the conclusion, since we're not sure which set, therefore you have to recline after when you drink all 4 of the cups. So Tosfos already raises the question, Psachim Daf Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. So maybe if you didn't recline when you drank the cups, you have to do it all over again. And the Rosh says that we're afraid that if you are going to drink again, the last 2 cups, when you have the 3rd cup is after Birchas Hamazon, the 4th cup accompanies Hallel, you're not supposed to continue to drink afterwards. It'll look like you're adding to the 4 cups. So therefore, only if you forgot to recline during the drinking of the first 2 cups do you repeat the drinking of the cups while reclining. But the message from the Rosh is unmistakably clear. The Rosh is saying that we're worried that you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of the eating of the matzah. We're afraid you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of the drinking of the cups altogether, because part and parcel of that mitzvah, a component of the mitzvah is that it has to be done while reclining. What is reclining all about? It's all about a derech cherus. It's all about that you are demonstrating a sense of freedom. You're being mefarsim, the nace, the miracle that we were brought out of Mitzrayim, me'abdus l'chayris, and therefore we have to recline like free individuals who have a sense of freedom, individuals who have a sense of royalty, of aristocracy, and therefore it's part and parcel of the fulfillment of these mitzvos. That's the way that the Rosh would understand it. But let's look at the context in which we introduce this notion altogether in the HaGadol. As we mentioned, it's introduced in the Manishtanas. What is the common denominator of what we discuss in the Manishtanas? So one way to understand the Manishtanas is that it means it's focusing on Manishtana. What is different about this night than other nights? It's the son turns to his father and says, hey, what's going on over here? Other nights are not like this. Explain to me why we're doing things differently this night. So then we can understand a little bit of the history of the inclusion of this statement in the Manishtana, because if you look in the Mishnah, in Psachim Daf Kuf Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, there are 4 questions, but none of them are this one. There are the 3 questions regarding the Chametz Matzah, regarding the Maror, regarding the dipping 2 times, but it does not include the question of B'chol Leilos Anu Achlim Ben Yashvinu Ben Misubin Alayla Azeh Kulanu Misubin. That is absent from the Mishnah. Instead, there is the question that was posed at the time that we ate the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach had to be eaten roasted, and the question was: other nights we eat our meat, we eat, whether it's roasted or cooked. It doesn't have to only be roasted, but tonight everything has to be tzli. Only if it's tzli, only if it's roasted, do we eat the Korban Pesach. So that question was deleted because we no longer have a Korban Pesach. In fact, our practice is not to have any roasted meat at the Seder because we don't want to make it look as if we're consecrating a Korban Pesach outside of the Beis HaMikdash, which would be forbidden. So we replaced that question, it seems, in the HaGadol with the question of the fact that we recline on this night, but on other nights we don't necessarily recline. And the Vilna Gaon explains that the reason why it was added was because this only now became a shinoi. It became something which was different, became something that was novel. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, in olden times, the time of the Mishnah, people, if they were free, if they weren't servants, if they weren't slaves, this is the way everybody ate. They ate reclining, they had their couches, they had their pillows, and that's the way people would normally eat. So therefore, it didn't look like it was anything different if they ate in this fashion on the Seder night. It was only afterwards, when it became less conventional, that it became added to the HaGadol. But if you look at the Rambam in Perek Ches of Hilchos Chametz Matzah, when he gives all the questions of the Manishtar and that were asked even at the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the Rambam assumes that the question of Kulanu Misubin was asked at that time as well. So that's a question mark, but why would it have been mentioned at that time as well, together with all of the other 4 questions that are mentioned in the Mishnah? Why was this one added according to the Rambam if it wasn't necessarily such a novelty? The idea of what the son asks, presumably, is that he's asking about things that are a novelty. I remember that when our son, Yehuda Dov, was born, he was born on an Erev Pesach 20 years ago. It was similar to this year's schedule in that it fell out on a Wednesday. Remember, he was born Wednesday afternoon, Erev Pesach, and then Wednesday night, my wife and I were in the hospital, and we made the Seder in the hospital together. We got up to the Manishtana. My wife looked at me and said, how come our son's not saying Manishtana? We're up to that. This is what he's supposed to do. So I gave the obvious answer. He's not saying Manishtana because to him, every single night is like this. He hasn't experienced any other nights. The whole idea of the Manishtana is that it's supposed to be something which is different from what has been experienced at other times. So it's the same idea over here, according to the way that it's the Vilna Gaon understands why we asked the question. But Rav Soloveitchik explained that this was not what the Rambam was getting at. The Rambam is saying that the Manishtana are really not just questions. We have really, if you look at the Rambam, when the Rambam describes the Manishtana process, he says that we get up to this point in time, and the son asks a question. He says that the Omer Mosgin Akos Hasheni, after the cup is poured, after the Kiddush, the second cup is poured, B'kan HaBein Shoel, the son asks the question, And then the one who's reading the Haggadah says Manishtana. Sounds like the son's asking different questions. The son's asking about whatever he's asking about, whatever appeared to be different. But then the person who is leading the Seder says the Manishtana, says the Rav, it's a Hatzara. It's a declaration of purpose. It's an explanation of what are the special mitzvahs of the Seder. Number one, we have matzah. That's a mitzvah d'oraisa, you have to eat matzah. Number two, we have maror. It's a mitzvah nowadays, the Rabbanim, at least in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, a mitzvah d'oraisa, matzah s'morim yochlu, you guys have to eat maror. Nowadays, without the Korban Pesach, it's a rabbinic requirement to eat maror. We have the obligation that we dip 2 times. According to the Rambam, the dipping in the charosis is done on multiple occasions. According to the Rambam, you dip the kapars in the charosis, you dip the maror in the charosis. So the Rambam says it's a myth, like Rabbi Elazar, but Rabbi Tzadok, it sounds like a little bit. There's a discussion in the Mishnah whether charosis is a mitzvah or not. Seems that the Rambam takes the opinion, at least in his Mishnah Torah, that at least on a D'Rabbanan level, dipping in charosis is considered to be a mitzvah D'Rabbanan. A mitzvah D'Rabbanan, zecher l'dam, that zecher l'tapuach. It's a commemoration of the shibud, of the suffering that we had in Mitzrayim and the redemption of Mitzrayim when the women would give birth under the tapuach tree, and all of that is included in the composition of the charosis. And then you get up to kulanu mesubin, and that also, according to the Rambam, is the fulfillment of a mitzvah. What mitzvah are we fulfilling exactly through the kulanu mesubin? So if you look at the lashon of the Rambam in Perek Shvi, the Rambam spells it out really quite explicitly. You don't even need like Briscoe Lumdus for this. This is just a pure Pashup shot in the Rambam. Says the Rambam, every single generation person has to display himself as if he is now leaving from Mitzrayim. As it says that we ourselves were delivered by HaKadosh Baruch Hu from Mitzrayim. And we have another pasuk in the Torah that says explicitly, that you have to remember that you are a slave in Mitzrayim. As if you yourself were an Eved, you yourself were a slave in Mitzrayim, and that you left Mitzrayim. So in order to fulfill this mitzvah of seeing yourself as if you have left Mitzrayim, that's a mitzvah d'oraisa. So there's a D'Rabbanan manifestation of that. What's the D'Rabbanan rabbinic mitzvah manifestation of that? To act in a way in which you exhibit different behaviors that display that you are acting as if you are leaving now from Mitzrayim. And the main behavior that you are supposed to exhibit is the haseba, the reclining, because that is an indication. And that's what the Rambam says explicitly. The peacock is shesoid adam b'layla hazeh. Therefore, when the person eats on this evening, a person has to eat and drink while reclining in the fashion of a free individual, of a free man or a free woman. And then the Rambam goes on to say, what is another manifestation of this? It is the drinking of the 4 cups of wine. Everybody has to drink 4 cups of wine, because there's an obvious question you can ask, and that question is, if the Manishtana is really a declaration, not really so much of a series of questions, but a series of declarations of what we are doing, of what the mitzvos of the night are, so why aren't we mentioning the mitzvah of the drinking of the Dalet Kosos? Isn't that a centerpiece in terms of the mitzvos of the night? So according to the Rambam, it's all, as explained by Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, it's all included within the notion of Haseba. Haseba is all about recollecting how we left in Mitzrayim and having that sense of acting like we have just been emancipated. And that's the idea of the Dalet Kosos as well. The Dalet Kosos is a commemoration of the miracle of the 4 different Lashonos, the 4 different phrases of Geula, of redemption when we left Mitzrayim. So therefore, I don't need another statement regarding the Dalet Kosos. That's all included, according to the Rambam, in Halayla Hazeh, Kulanu Misubin. Now, that appears, and according to the Rambam, if that's the case, then it should follow that if somebody ate the matzah or somebody drank the Dalet Kosos, they drank the 4 cups of wine without reclining, then there's no point really in doing it again, because they've already fulfilled the mitzvah of the eating of the matzah. They've already fulfilled the mitzvah of the drinking of the daled kosos, the 4 cups of wine. And if they would just do it again, there's no fulfillment of eating the matzah, the haseba of eating the mitzvah of matzah while reclining, because you already fulfilled the mitzvah of matzah. There's no fulfillment of drinking the 4 cups of wine, haseba, while reclining, because you already fulfilled the mitzvah of the 4 cups. And in fact, you won't find anywhere in the Rambam a mention that if a person failed to recline, that they have to eat the matzah or drink the dal kosis again, bahaseba, while reclining. And this is pointed out by Rav Velvola Soloveitchik, also known as the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav in his Chidushei Agriz al Rambam say, in fact, that that's the Shita of the Rambam. Haseba is a separate standalone mitzvah by itself. Since it's a separate standalone mitzvah, so therefore, if they ate the matzah without haseba, really this was the time to fulfill the mitzvah of haseba while you ate the matzah. But if you didn't do it, you blew it. You're not going to be able to do haseba while fulfilling the mitzvah of matzah, because you already fulfilled the mitzvah. And so too with respect to the daled kosos. It says to Rav Velvola Soloveitchik, this really is all dependent, whether you hold like the Rosh or whether you hold like the Rambam, is dependent upon how you read a certain Gemara that speaks about haseba in Gemara Psachim Daf Kuf Chesam and Aleph. It speaks about a shamish. It speaks about somebody who is an attendant, a waiter at the meal. The waiters at the meal typically wouldn't have a chance to sit down too much because they were busy serving people and attending to people at the meal. So is a shamish required to engage in haseba and reclining? Or do we say a shamish is off the hook because they have to serve everybody? They can't really sit so much and recline. So the Gemara says as follows, the Gemara on Daf Kuf Chesam and Aleph, towards the bottom of the page. So the Gemara says, Shamish Mai, Ibarlu, Shamish Mai. They asked the question, so Shamish have to do haseba, the waiter, does he have to recline or not? Tashma, so we have so come and listen. The Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Hashamish achol kazayis masa kishumesev yotza. If the Kashamish ate a kazayas matzah, he ate the shear, the measurement of matzah you're supposed to eat to fulfill your mitzvah, which is a kazayas, so then he has fulfilled his obligation. So the implication is, mesiv in, lo mesiv lo, shma mina, that it's only if he reclines that he fulfills his obligation. So we see from here that a shamish is obligated to recline. So the Brisker Rav, says that the way that the Rosh reads the Gemara is that the shamish only fulfills the mitzvah if he has reclined. So we see he has an obligation to recline, because the nature of the obligation to recline is that you only fulfill the mitzvah of eating the matzah if you have reclined. If you didn't recline when you ate the matzah, then you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. So when it says mesev yatsa, that when if he reclined, then he fulfilled the mitzvah, it means if he reclined, he fulfilled the mitzvah of eating matzah. If he didn't recline, then he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah. But says the Brisker Rav, the Rambam obviously read the Gemara very differently. The Rambam read the Gemara to mean that if that normally if a person is sitting and having the meal, when are they supposed to recline? So the main time that they're supposed to recline is for the eating of the matzah, the kazayas of matzah, and the drinking of the daled kosos. But really, since reclining is a standalone mitzvah, so a person should recline during the entire meal. That's really the main. That's really the optimal fulfillment of the mitzvah if it's during the entire meal. How do we know this? So again, the Brisker Rav didn't have to make it up, because you know who says this? None other than the Rambam himself. The Rambam says that when is it that a person, when is it that the person's supposed to recline? So says the Rambam, when the person eats the kazayas matzah and when he drinks the 4 cups of wine. And says the Rambam that for the rest of the meal, the rest of the eating and the drinking of the meal, says the Rambam that if he reclined for the duration of the meal, that is considered to be praiseworthy. It's not mi'akev. It's not going to define the ultimate fulfillment of the mitzvah. The main part of the mitzvah is supposed to be performed when one eats the matzah or drinks the daled kosos. However, it continues to be a fulfillment of the mitzvah even for the duration of the meal, if he reclines for the rest of the meal as well. So therefore says the Brisker Rav, you know how the Rambam read this Gemara? The Rambam read the Gemara that it's a Chiddush, that the Shamish, who's not going to be able to sit and recline when he eats the rest of the meal, so you might think that's not going to be a sufficient fulfillment of the mitzvah if he's only going to recline during the eating of the kazayas of matzah. So the Chiddush is, Hashamish she'achol kazayas matzah k'shumei sev yatzah. Even though the Shamish only reclined when he ate the kazayas matzah, he was yatzah. He fulfilled his obligation. Which obligation did the Shamish did the waiter fulfill? He fulfilled the obligation of haseba, of reclining. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah of matzah would be fulfilled either way. Whether he reclines or whether he doesn't recline, he's going to fulfill that mitzvah. But in terms of the mitzvah of haseba, of reclining, so the Chiddush is, even though he only reclined for the kazayas of matzah, not for the rest of the meal, so he still fulfilled his obligation. That's the way that the Rambam would understand the reading of the Gemara. So how do we paskin? How does this translate into Shulchan Aruch? So if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, so the Mechaber in Siman Tov Ayin Beis in Hilchos Pesach says that if a person ate the matzah or drank the cups without reclining, then they should eat the matzah again and drink the cups again. And the Ramah brings sort of like a technical reason why a person might be exempt, namely the opinion of the Raviyah, which we're going to get to momentarily. The opinion of the Raviyah, the early German rabbinic authority, early 13th century, that the Raviyah said, nowadays, even somebody who is in royalty, even somebody who is a free man, a free woman, they don't recline as a general rule. That's not the way in which people exhibit and assert their freedom. And therefore, nowadays, there is no requirement to recline. So the Ramah says, okay, so according to some opinions, since the Raviyah holds that way, if a person didn't recline, maybe they don't have to repeat eating the matzah or drinking the cups, but the Ramah rejects that opinion. He says, V'nir Ali, he says that according to me, I think that if the person ate the matzah without reclining, then they should eat the matzah again while reclining. If they drank from the cups, and again, he distinguishes between the first cups, last cups for technical reasons, for at least the first two cups, if they drank without reclining, since a person has the ability to continue to drink during that time, then they should continue to drink, they should drink again while reclining. And that seems to be the bottom line of the Ramah. So the Ramah really seems to fundamentally accept the psak of the Mechaber, which is like the psak of the Rosh, that the obligation of reclining is a component of the mitzvah of eating matzah and drinking the dalakosas, that it has to be done while reclining in order to fulfill the mitzvah. However, the Ramah then goes on to say exactly what the Rambam said. The Ramah, at the conclusion of his statement, says, "L'chatchila yasev kol ha'su'uda." However, he says, ideally, the best and optimal fulfillment of the mitzvah is if the person reclines for the entire meal. So, which way is it? Is the Ramah paskening like the Rosh, or is he paskening like the Rambam? So the answer is that there's really a third approach. What is the third approach? The third approach is to say that really both are 100% true. On the one hand, the halacha is like the Rosh, that in order to properly fulfill the eating of the matzah and the drinking of the 4 cups of wine, one is supposed to recline, because that the matzah, eating of matzah, also is a manifestation of derech cherus. It was with matzah, it was with our unleavened bread that we hurriedly left Mitzrayim before it had a chance to become leavened. And therefore, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah properly as well, we have to have that derech cherus component, that sense of eating it in a free and in an elegant and royal fashion of reclining. But at the same time, haseba is also a mitzvah in its own right. So even after one has eaten the matzah, and even in addition to the reclining that one does when they drink the 4 cups of wine, it's still appropriate to manifest some type of a display, as the Rambam says, of ki'ilu yatzam Mitzrayim, of showing the entire night, the entire su'uda, and the entire meal, that we are acting in the fashion of free men and women who have just left Egypt, and therefore it is appropriate for us to recline. So therefore, it is necessary to recline during the eating of the matzah and the dal kosas, even in order to fulfill those mitzvos. Those are also mitzvos of derech cherus, of demonstrating the miracle of leaving Mitzrayim, and they must be done while reclining. And if you didn't, then you're supposed to do it over again. But you're also supposed to continue to recline for the duration of the entire meal. And in fact, this is indicated as well by the Mishnah at the beginning of Perek Arvei Psachim, which says that even an aniyam ispanis min tzedakah lo yochal ad sheyeseh. Even somebody who's a poor individual who has to be supported by charity funds should not eat until they have reclined. It doesn't say they shouldn't all eat matzah or the 4 cups until they recline. They shouldn't eat all together, meaning that every part of the eating process of the Suda on Pesach requires reclining in order to be done properly, that even an ani is supposed to recline for the entire meal. And the Vilna Gaon, in fact, says that in his commentary to the Shulchan Aruch, he says that really both of these messages are conveyed by that very same Gemara. That you don't have to read the Gemara either, like the Brisker Rav explained that the Rosh reads it, or the way that the Rambam reads it, but you can read it like both. So the Vilna Gaon says, why do you eat the matzah again? Because the Gemara said, but the shamish, if he ate the kazayas matzah while reclining yotza, he fulfills the obligation. Mesev bin lo mesev lo. That it seems that you don't fulfill the obligation of eating the matzah unless you recline. But at the same time, since it says she'achal kazayas matzah, he ate a kazayas matzah. So the Vilna Gaon says, mashman di'evid. It's mashma only b'di'evid does he get away with fulfilling the mitzvah of reclining by virtue of reclining while eating the kazayas matzah. But the implication is really he should recline for the entire meal. So really both are entirely true. Now, if you look at the Rambam says the fika kashis soed adam b'layla hazeh tzarech lechov lishtos u'mesev. He says when you eat your meal, you're supposed to eat and drink. It sounds like to the extent that haseba is a mitzvah in its own right, it's a mitzvah in the context of the su'uda, in the context of eating the meal. And just like we said in ani, the poor person that shouldn't eat ad sheyeseh until he reclines. It sounds like the emphasis is on the meal. The way in which this derech cherus, this notion of manifesting the freedom that we feel on the. So that is a function of the su'uda, of the meal that we're going to be eating on the Seder night. So then the question arises, what about the components of the Seder that aren't intrinsically tied into the su'uda? What about, for example, karpas? When you're going to be eating the karpas on the Seder night. So do you recline or do you not recline during the eating of the karpas? So the Abu Dram is of the opinion that you recline even during the eating of the karpas, of the dipping of the parsley dip into the salt. So the question then that you have to raise is, wait a second, if it's a function of su'uda, a function of the meal itself, so then how would that be manifested during the eating of the karpas, which is way before we get up to the su'uda? So Rav Asher Weiss talks about this, and he quotes the Bach. The Bach says that why is it that we dip the karpas at the beginning of the meal altogether? And he says, so we all know the answer, so the children will ask. That's nice, the children will ask. But when the children ask, we better have a good answer. So the Bach gives the answer. The Bach says that the answer is that 3 people, they sit around, they have a little bit of cocktails, they have a little bit of an appetizer, a little bit of a smorgasbord before they begin the main meal. They kind of sit down and they schmooze with each other, and they have, some dips out. They have, some pretzels, and they have some vegetables that they can dip into some sort of a sauce. And that's what we're doing as well. We're demonstrating that we are free people, and therefore we have like this little bit of hors d'oeuvres. We have this little bit of a dipping party before we begin the main meal. That's all part of the preparation for the way in which free people, in which elegant people enter into having a meal. The other question is, what about the HaGadol itself? During the recitation of the HaGadol, is it appropriate to recline or not to recline? So the Shalah HaKadosh is quoted as saying that you shouldn't recline during the recitation of the Haggadah because the Haggadah has to be stated be'emo v'yira. It has to be stated in an atmosphere of fear and trepidation, and therefore reclining is inappropriate. So Shlomo Kluger asked a question on the Shalah. He said, but what about what we read in the Haggadah, that Rabbi Maisib, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva, Shahayu Mesubin B'Bnei Brak? We had Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva, they were Mesubin, they were leaning, they were reclining in Bnei Brak, and they were talking about the Yisipo Yetzias Mitzrayim, they're fulfilling the mitzvah of the Haggadah, talking about the leaving from Egypt. And they were doing it while they were Mesubin. There's a Tosefta that talks about Ram Gamliel, and the Zekanim were Mesubin Belud. They were reclining in Lud, and they were talking about the halachos of Pesach. So it seems that reclining is appropriate for the Haggadah itself. So Rav Asher says, Lule de Mistapina. Said, if not for the fact that I was fearful of the fact that everyone else quotes the Shlah as saying that it's disrespectful to recline during the Haggadah itself, I would have said that when I looked at the Shlah seemed to only be talking about not reclining during Hallel, but during the Haggadah, that is all part and parcel of the Suda itself, because part of the Suda of Pesach is that we say, Bavor Zeh, Sashem Li Mitzaysim Mitzrayim, that it's because of this, it's because of what we are commemorating through Zeh, through the matzah and the maror, the dal kosos of everything that's part of the Suda, that we are recounting in that context, using that as a prop in a landscape. We're recounting the Haggadah really is, in that sense, part of the Suda, and you could justify reclining, especially if you're not going to be like lying on a bed, you're just reclining to the side a little bit. But he says, Lule de Mistapina. He says at the end, he is Mistapina. He is fearful of taking issue with the way that the Shlah is generally quoted, but there could be a justification for that as well. Now, what about women? So we know that the Gemara says that women don't recline, but the reason women don't recline is because it's, as the Sheiltos explains, that's not the way that women, even free women, would not generally recline. That wasn't the way that they generally sat. Some say that it's because if the woman is sitting in the presence of her husband, so she might not feel comfortable reclining in the presence of her husband. But the Gemara itself says the women are not exempt from Haseba per se. If you have an Isha Chashuva, if you have a very important, a very illustrious woman, so then she is supposed to recline. And the Ramah quotes the Aguda as saying all of our women are Nashim Chashuvos, meaning they're not inhibited from reclining in front of their husbands. If anything, the husbands might be inhibited from reclining in front of their wives. But the husband have the mitzvah, so that's not supposed to stop them in any way. But a woman who's an Isha Chashuva, she certainly is supposed to recline. So the question is, what about our practice, Bisman Hazeh? Do the Nashim Chashuvos, all of our women, we assume, are Nashim Chashuvos, so do they recline or not? So the Ramah says no. When it comes to women nowadays, even Nashim Chashuvos have the practice not to recline. Now, this is not by any means universal. The Kasav Sofer writes that his father, the Kasav Sofer, would always tell him to set aside a place, a special seat with cushions for his mother, who was definitely an Isha Kashuva. She was the daughter of Rabbi Akiva Eger, so that the wife of the Kassam Sofer would be able to lean on the cushions and recline at the Seder. So not everyone necessarily follows this practice, but the Ramah says that's the practice that women don't recline. Why? Because they rely on the opinion of the Rabbiyah that we quoted earlier, who said that nowadays it's not even the practice of free people, free men and women, to recline when they eat their meals, and therefore there's no derech eretz. So therefore, the question has to be posed. So why then did the Ramah say the practice nowadays is the Nashim Chashuvos, who have the same obligation as a man? So why is it that they have the practice not to recline, but the men still do have the practice? Ad Kedei Kach, so much so that the Ramah says that if they ate the matzah, drank the daled kosas, the first two at least, without reclining, then they would have to repeat it. So Rav Soloveitchik gave an explanation. He said that there are really two different components to the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Haseba. One component is what we mentioned before, that is derech erus. You're manifesting that you're acting like a free person. A free person, just like when we left Mitzrayim, so we became free. So a free person reclines. So therefore we do the same types of actions that a free person would do. So we recline as well. That's part of the Pesume Nisa. That's part of the advertising of the miracle. A woman is obligated in that. That's the idea of Apen Hoyu Bioso Anes. They also were included in the miracle, so they're supposed to do the things of Pesume Nisa, like drinking the 4 cups of wine. But we say that if something is no longer nowadays considered to be a manifestation of derech cherus, it's not the way that free people conduct themselves. So therefore, a woman is off the hook because they only have to do it if it's derech cherus. That's one aspect of the mitzvah, the notion it's derech cherus. We might have other things that are derech cherus that women would do today as well. Like the Gra says that when the Shulchan Aruch says that you're supposed to be masad the Shulchan, you're supposed to set up at the Shulchan in a beautiful fashion, with your Yisad Shulchan with your best mekalim, with your best and most elegant utensils. So he says that this is because that's a modern day manifestation of derech cherus. That's how free and elegant people make their meals with very fancy dishes. So that for sure you're supposed to do nowadays. And similarly, the Yerushalmi says that if you're going to eat standing up, that's something that slaves do, to eat standing up. So therefore, even if women don't do a seba, they certainly can fulfill the mitzvah of eating the Pesach meal and the matzah and the dal kosas if they're doing it standing up. However, when it comes to reclining, so reclining is no longer something that's derech cherus. But there's a second aspect of the mitzvah of a seba as well, and that is zeicher l'nes, that we're supposed to do things in commemoration of a miracle. There are things that we do in commemoration of a miracle that are not necessarily a manifestation of the miracle. They're not necessarily that we're doing a persume nisa. Like, for example, we wear tefillin. Zeicher l'nes, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. The Torah says that this is why we wear tefillin. It's zeicher l'nes, but women aren't obligated in wearing tefillin. So from the perspective of zeicher l'nes, so men are still obligated because when we left Mitzrayim, so the manner of free people was to recline at that point in time. So zeicher l'nes, in commemoration of the miracle, we still recline nowadays, even if it isn't necessarily the practice of royalty or free people when they eat their meals to recline nowadays. Where do we find this notion of zeicher l'nes, of there being an aspect of a seba which is zeicher l'nes? So this is from the Medrash. There is a Medrash that talks about what happened when we left Mitzrayim. The Mitzrayim were about to run after us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have taken us straight into the Derech Eretz Plishtim, could have taken us straight into Eretz Yisrael, but instead, he kind of made us wander in the Midbar. He turned away our path. What's the word that's used in the Torah to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu turned away our path? Hashem said, maybe we'll go towards the Plishtim. We'll see the Plishtim are going to fight against us, and the Mitzvah are running after us. We'll get scared. We'll run back to Egypt. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu turned us in a different direction. The word that's used for turn is vayasev. Vayasev Elokim esa'am derech hamidbar yam suf. Says the Medrash Rabbah, Mikan amu rabosenu. So it's from here that our rabbis learn, afilu ani shebi lo yochal ad sheyesev. Even a poor person is not supposed to eat until they recline on the Pesach night. Because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did when he took us out of Egypt. And the commentaries explain, Vayasev Elokim is not only a turning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu performed, but he made us feel very, very comfortable. He put us in the beds and he lied us down, Kederach Melochem, Mesubim, Mitzufin, Amitoseim, that we should feel a sense of security, a sense of elegance, a sense of royalty, that this was what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to us at that point in time, so we shouldn't be afraid of all these other nations. And so too, this is what we are commemorating during the Seder night. So that's something which is the aspect of the mitzvah, which is pertinent to the men as well. Now, the question becomes whether this manifestation of derech cherus, of acting as free people, is really not applicable nowadays. So the Aruch HaShulchan takes tremendous exception with the Rav Yah. And the Aruch HaShulchan says that there's no greater manifestation of the Maisech of cherus, of displaying an atmosphere and a behavior of becoming free and being free than reclining. And why is that? Precisely because of the fact that it's different. It's something that the children are going to ask about. This is based on what we explained was the simple explanation of why we have this question in the Manishtana. Because it's Nishtana. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, disagreeing with the Rav Yah, since it's a mitzvah to make things to do things differently on this night, so that the children are going to ask questions, why are you doing things differently? Therefore, there is no better shinoi, there is no better deviation than the obligation to recline, because we don't normally do it, and tonight we're going to do it. So therefore, the very fact that we are doing it, even though it's irregular, is itself the greatest manifestation of derech cherus, of showing that we're doing things differently. Why? Because we are free, because we have the luxury to be able to do anything that we please, even if it's not something that we do the rest of the year. So he holds that this is the ultimate fulfillment of a derech cherus. So even in this respect, the Aruch HaShulchan takes issue with the Rabya, and he says nobody holds like the Rabya. Even his contemporaries, the Rabya's contemporaries, the Hagos Mordechai, who lived at the end of that century, said that he's very much a das yechidah, he's very much a lone opinion that is rejected pretty much by all of the other authorities. So the Aruch HaShulchan is not fond of citing or utilizing that opinion when it comes to these discussions. So therefore, we see that there are really two different aspects of the mitzvah. There's the aspect of the derech cherus, of acting like free people, like royalty. There's the aspect of zeichel hades, commemorating the miracle. And whether or not nowadays there's a fulfillment of the derech cherus, is a machlokas between the Rabya and other authorities, as we just saw from the Aruch HaShulchan. There's also, Warman points out in his Oros Chag Pesach, there's a third dimension as well. The third dimension, he says, is how is it that we left Mitzrayim? We left in a rush. We left Mitzrayim in a rush. That's why our leavened flour was not able to, our unleavened flour was not able to rise and become leavened and become chametz, because we ate in a rush. So he quotes a Chidushei Arim, who says, based on a Rashi in Brachos, Daf Mem Aleph, that whenever you recline, you're able to focus much more on your eating. When you're sitting straight, you're having conversations with people. People are talking to you. You're talking to them. It's going to take you longer to eat. But if you're off in your own corner, you're kind of like in your own world a little bit. So you're not as easily distracted. You're kind of, blissfully ignorant of what's going on around you. You're in a safe place. So while you're in that safe place, you're going to eat faster. So that's another reason why to recline, so that we can still find, sometimes we're in turbulent situations like the current situation that we're in right now, but when you recline, so you're able to kind of take a deep breath and be in a safe place, have a safe harbor. In that safe harbor, you'll be able to eat without any distractions at the same time. So that is another explanation as to why it would be that we would recline even nowadays, when it's not the normal fashion of people to do so. So let's want to focus on a couple of other things and then give a little bit of hashkafa. So when we spoke about the Daled Kosos, we said that there was really a machlokus as to we had to read the Gemara, whether the obligation of reclining is during the first two cups or the last two cups. The first two cups are drunk while we're talking about the story of how we were slaves in Egypt and HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out, but we weren't actually taken out yet until we get to the end of the story. And then the last two cups are after we've told the story and we already had been redeemed from Egypt. So one opinion in the Gemara is you focus on the first two cups, because the first two cups are the actual process of redemption. The last two cups, mind the hava, we were already redeemed, so why do we have to recline anymore? It's no longer reenacting the Exodus. The other opinion says, well, during the first two cups, we weren't redeemed yet. So what is there to celebrate? Why should we recline at that point in time? It's only during the last two cups that the Geula had already happened, that we had the Kahavya Cherus, that we already had experienced the emancipation, that we could celebrate at that point in time. So what we could say is that what's the maskana of the Gemara? In the conclusion of the Gemara says that we should recline for all four cups. So some authorities explain, like the Beis Halevi says, we're rejecting the idea that it's either the first two or the last two. We're saying at the end, you're supposed to recline really for all four, because both are significant reasons to celebrate. Number one, the process of salvation, even when you haven't been redeemed yet, just the confidence level that you have that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take you out of a tough situation, that's something to celebrate and to recline for. And then the recollection of the salvation as well is also a reason for us to recline. And we could say that these two elements correspond to the Persume Nisa. The Persume Nisa is going through the process of the miracle. That's the first 2 cups. And the Zeichel Lanes, the commemoration of the miracle, is what is commemorated by the last 2 cups. So let's look at this Agadata that we quoted from the beginning of Parshas Bishalach. It gives us, I think, a better understanding altogether of this whole idea of Halayla Hazeh Kulanu Misubin. And this goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the Drasha, which is that even when it's Halayla Hazeh, nonetheless, we still see the Derech Cheres. We still see the potential for Geula. We still see the redemption, which is very much in process, even if right now we're going through something which is Makas Choshech. We're going through a sense of darkness. Nonetheless, we know that redemption is around the corner. Even if it seems like it's a shinoi, it seems like it's something which is very, very different. Even if you're in a situation, lo seitzu ish mi pesach beiso ad boker, you have to be locked up in your homes as the Jews had to be at the time of Makas Bechoros, with the actual night of emancipation. Nonetheless, we know that emancipation is in the air. So the Chazon Yomim, it's a sefer that was authored by Rabbi Yonasan Sachs, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Landers Yeshiva. He was a Rosh Yeshiva Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan. When I was there as Menayel, he served as a Rosh Yeshiva. He left in the middle to go to Landers, but I would bring him back from time to time to give shiurim in the Beis Medrash. He still maintained a very close connection with the yeshiva, very close and loving connection with the yeshiva afterwards. Chazon Yomim. And in that sefer, I think that he wrote something which is incredibly profound and relevant for the time that we find ourselves right now. He quotes of Rabbeinu Mechaye, who explains in the name of Rabbeinu Hananel regarding this idea of why HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to turn us away, that first Haseba, when we were leaving Mitzrayim. Why was it necessary for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to lead us in a different direction? So he explains that if we would have gone straight into Eretz Yisrael, we wouldn't have had the same appreciation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We wouldn't have had the same connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of the fact that we had to spend all of those years in the Midbar. And as a result, we had to have bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu while we were in a wilderness where it seemed like it would be very difficult to survive. And we were able to have the Anone Kavod. We were able to have the Mon. We were able to have the Be'er. We were able to have the Slav. We were able to have the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf. So all of this strengthened our connection with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All of this strengthened our relationship with each other. And all of this strengthened our midos tovos, so we were able to learn how to conduct ourselves, what to do and what not to do, because a person is really refined when they go through trying circumstances. And he says the following, I'm going to read it in Hebrew because it's so incredibly amazing how this relates right now to this situation that we're in. We learned from this idea of the original Haseba we're commemorating on the Seder night, how even in difficult circumstances we have to believe Yeshuas Hashem keheref ayin, that the deliverance of Hashem can come in the blink of an eye. In Ken Yesh Lomar, the Shemitam Seh, Afilu Ani B'Yisrael Lo Yochal Ad Sheyeseh. Now we can understand why even a poor person who doesn't normally recline, for whom it wouldn't be natural, is supposed to recline on the Seder night. Because even though when he's poor, he doesn't feel like he's fully free. Nonetheless, he has to believe that the salvation of Hashem can come in the blink of an eye. And that the end is going to be so much better than the beginning. So it's too with us that we're still in the Golos. And that this trial and tribulation that we're having right now is part of that Golos. We still haven't had the full redemption. We're still praying every single year, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, the Kasi Avdei Achashverosh Anu. We have to recognize we're still in Golos. Mikol Makom Anu Misubin. Nonetheless, we recline. Umachrizin L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. And we announce to the world, we announce to each other and to the world, we make the declaration and we sing L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim. This is like on Lahavdil, on Erev Pesach, on the eve of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising on April 18th, 1943, the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto gathered together for a Pesach Seder. And there's a description by a survivor of the Seder that took place that evening in the apartment of Rabbi Eliezer Meisel. And the person writes, amidst this destruction, The table in the center of the room looked incongruous, with glasses filled with wine, with the family seated around, the rabbi reading the Haggadah. His reading was punctuated by explosions and the rattling of machine guns. The faces of the family around the table were lit by the red light from the burning buildings nearby, and nonetheless, they persevered. Nonetheless, they had the Seder. Somebody else who had a similar Seder in a bunker that evening together with his uncle had the experience that he remembered that the uncle turned to him and said, if you live, you'll tell your children and grandchildren about this. And that person he told his children and grandchildren about this. The Pesach Seder is about perseverance, persistence, preservation of tradition, faith, and courage. It doesn't matter what is currently happening around us. We believe that all the trials and tribulations, even the first two kosos, are derech cherus, a part of the process of redemption. It's always fresh, current, and relevant, and we always fuse together the past and the future by celebrating the present, regardless of the challenges or the circumstances. So halayla hazeh kulanu misubin. We remember that there are always challenges and obstacles in our path. The test of this Pesach is to continue to be misubin, to reaffirm our faith in Hashem, our history of salvation from our various trials and tribulations over the years, and our celebration and fulfillment of the mitzvahs that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us and that we have embraced tenaciously throughout the generations, passing down from father to son, from mother to daughter, from uncle to nephew, from aunt to niece. And therefore, we have to remember that this Leil Pesach is still Leil Shimurim Hu LaHashem, a time that Hashem watches over us and guides us into a more promising and auspicious future. And we still are able to say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, and it's certainly my prayer that it should even be L'shana hazos b'Yerushalayim before we even get to Pesach altogether. But if not, then at the very least, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim ha'pniyah. I want very much to take this opportunity to wish all of you a Shabbat HaGadol, Shalom u'Mevarach, and a safe and healthy Chag Kosher V'Sameach.
On behalf of us all, Rabbi Rees, we want to thank you for another brilliant Shabbos HaGadol Drasha. We look forward to Shabbos Shuvah, when we'll be sitting in shul and able to listen to you live all together. Everyone should have a very safe Pesach. Thank you once again for joining us, and thank you, Rabbi Rees, for your erudition, your brilliance, and your ability to communicate so beautifully difficult concepts.
Thank you.